some interesting news that is starting to sneak out from various sources around the globe. And to bring that all into perspective for us, we're once again welcoming in Calvin Fish. Hey, Cal, how's it going?
Great to see you, mate. I'm all good.
Yeah, likewise. Great to see you as well. I think we're just going to jump in because we've got some interesting topics here. The first one I want to get into is in Formula One, and it's the cost cap. And there's been some stuff brewing with that for a little while. Big teams saying we need an inflationary increase to be able to get through the year. The smaller teams going, no, cost cap's there for a reason. Let's move into it. Just recently, the cost cap was adjusted upward to the tune of some $4.3 million, bringing the cost cap to a little over $145 million. And Toto Wolff made the quote. He said, too little for the big teams, too much for the small teams. Nobody's happy. Maybe that means it was the right decision. But certainly a lot of discussion going on about that right now.
There is, and I think for the bigger teams, Greg, say the Mercedes team, Red Bull, Ferrari, they're used to spending probably $300 million a year annually to get through their racing season. So for this cost cap to come in, and under extraordinary circumstances with the cost of living for all of us, I know if you look at your bills this month, they're a lot higher than they were 6 months ago. Same for me. So for race teams, with the amount of logistics involved, the amount of personnel they have, they're certainly looking at some increases on what their budgets were supposed to be for this year. And then you add in crash damage, stuff like that. I think the key is a lot of these smaller teams, a lot of the midfield teams are already working under the same restraints anyway. They're probably working underneath that cost cap already. So for them, it makes no difference. That's all the money they have to spend. For the bigger teams, they've had to bring it way down and really cramp their style, admittedly. And now you get right on that threshold, and you look at the Mercedes team, for example, really struggling with the porpoising with these cars, which we've discussed earlier this year, Greg. And now they're having to do extra R&D to try and sort their car out, yet stay within that containment. So I think that's where they're really struggling right now.
But the whole idea of the cost cap was to bring the field closer together, was it not? To allow the smaller teams that don't have the massively deep pockets to be able to compete with the big three. And I think that, I really understand their point. One of the discussions is, okay, what if we go over that cost cap? And I know that the FIA and Liberty Media have come up with, if it's 5% or less, it's a minor overspend, won't be that big a deal. If it's over that, then they're calling it a material overspend. And the discussion is, what should the penalties be? Should they be draconian or should they still be rather lax? I've got my opinions on it. I'd first like to hear yours.
Well, I think in the broad sense of things, I think it is great to have this cost cap in place, brings more teams into play, levels the playing field. But again, getting to my initial point, for the bigger teams, they're having to really restrict what they were doing before and make that massive adjustment. And I think we're under extraordinary circumstances. Take a smaller team, maybe spending $100 million. Well, if they go up by $5 million, they're still well below that cap. So it's really not adjusting how they were going to operate for this championship season. I think moving forward, they need to discuss it, make sure it's the right number so that everyone can operate, and we'll get to the idealistic and simplistic way where everyone has equal amount of revenue and resources to play with and get the job done. But I think for this year, I think for the big teams, it is different to the smaller teams because, as I said, they're having to bring it in, they're having to really squeeze it. The smaller teams may not be spending that amount anyway.
And I understand that aspect, but now that they've gotten that inflationary adjustment, and again, the bigger team saying it's really not enough, to me, that's what this whole cost cap thing is. And if that means, to me, again, if the bigger teams find themselves not able to bring new bits and pieces, not going as fast, the smaller teams get closer, I think that's fantastic. That's what the cost cap thing was. And if they have a big overage and go over that 5% and it becomes that material overspend, I think it should be, a draconian. I really do, because that's how we get this field to have 20 cars or 20 cars actually running even closer, which was what it was all about. I think these big teams need to be reined in, and they need to learn, hey, you got to stay within this or you're going to lose championship points or something along the line. So get serious about it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I really do. I just think, again, this year we're learning. Teams have had to make adjustments already, and we're dealing with unusual circumstances coming out of the pandemic, global supply issues, getting stuff shipped quickly and on delay, things like that. So I think for next year, I'm in total agreement. I think for this year, They need that flexibility just to get through the season, learn from it, discuss with the FIA what is the correct number moving forward. And yes, a cost cap is the way to go.
And of course, you always have to wonder about the perspective. How are the fans going to have a lot of sympathy when these teams are looking, for $5 million chunks here and there, and the fans are being priced right out of being able to buy tickets these days? You look at the cost of a Miami ticket. I'm sure Vegas is going to be the same, and other venues around the world. Does this cost cap? Do you see it having any sort of potential trickle down effect to maybe making the ability for fans to be able to afford to go to a race a little bit more affordable?
I'm not sure if they really correlate, Greg. We're talking about teams' operating budgets versus promoters and putting on an event with the number that they have to pay to have a Formula One race there. So they've got to make ends meet. I know the ticket numbers at Miami were extreme. I know to get those suite tickets was like crazy, like $10,000 plus. So there's the upper end. I mean, Formula One attracts the wealthiest, it attracts the celebrities, and they're willing to pay that number. So for the general admission, it has to work. The whole pie has to work for a promoter to put on a new event like Vegas, for example, next year here in the States. So I'm not sure that a team's budget and what the ticket price is to the fan really totally coincide. It's all about the FIA, making sure the teams don't get too out of hand, and the haves and the have-nots. And at the same time, offering a product and an event in terms of Formula One at a price that a promoter can bring them there and still make it efficient and earn money.
Yeah, and that makes total sense. The only part of that is obviously if you continue to have these ticket prices skyrocket, even maybe some of the most ardent fans are going to go, look, I'm done with this. So I think they've got to kind of keep an eye out on that. And I understand, the suites and the high budget things. All right, so that's going to be super expensive, but keep the GA tickets at a very reasonable amount so that fans can come in and do that. Let's switch gears a little bit here. Some recent news, kind of interesting, that NASCAR is going back to Chicago, but not at the old Joliet Speedway. It's going to be in a road course right downtown. That's pretty significant news.
Race cars hitting the streets of Chicago for the first time Tuesday. NASCAR driver Bubba Wallace taking off in his. Just a little preview of the sights and sounds now set for the city next summer.
And I think it's going to be one of the most iconic race courses maybe ever, and introduce a whole new fan base to what NASCAR is about in the city of Chicago. We couldn't pass up that opportunity.
Chicago hosting what's being called a first-of-its-kind NASCAR street course race downtown. The first ever NASCAR Cup Series race planned for July 2nd, 2023.
It's great. I mean, I used to live downtown Chicago, so it's in my old neighborhood there. So it's going to be phenomenal. I mean, the unfortunate part of that is, as I believe, that comes at the expense of no longer running on the road course at Road America, which is absolutely my favorite. So disappointed to see that may be going away. We also understand that there's going to be an IMSA event alongside it. I don't think it's going to be the full WeatherTech Championship. Certainly details will come out next month at the State of the Union address at Road America early August with John Doonan and everyone from IMSA. But I think it may be a support series, just reading between the lines. But I think looking at those cup cars around there, I think initially when I thought about it, boy, putting a heavy stock car around a street course, but I looked at the simulation and there was also some video yesterday of where the track's actually being laid out. Some of those streets are like 4 or 5 lanes wide, so there is enough room for one of those cup cars to operate there. It should be quite the show.
Yeah, I was looking at the street map, and that there's one corner that just is this long U-shaped corner. Be interesting to see. Do you think maybe the reason that WeatherTech itself might not be there is because NASCAR and the Cup Series maybe don't want a comparison with the top IMSA class? Because, the NASCAR racing is going to be fun because they're going to be beating and banging on each other, but those IMSA prototypes are going to be scorching that place comparatively.
Yeah, certainly they're going to hustle around that track way, way quicker than a heavy stock car. But I think a lot of it is that IMSA has such a high regard for Road America and what that track has done in terms of the infrastructure, continually improving. 4-mile circuit is ideally suited to multi-class racing with the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, and we obviously head up there in a couple of weeks' time. So it would be disappointing to lose that. And then if you have 2 events so close together, can you get the draw from the fans to attend both events? I think would be the major key there.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. And I'm with you on Road America. I always call it America's Nürburgring for a reason. It's just that special. But nonetheless, this event in Chicago is going to be fascinating and can't wait to see that play out. Another gear switch here. Let's talk a little bit IndyCar and a huge achievement here this last weekend in Toronto. Scott Dixon tying Mario Andretti's win record, putting him in a tie with Mario for second place all time behind AJ Foyt.
4 wins at Toronto, but more significantly, history made. Win number 52. Scott Dixon has tied Mario Andretti for the second most wins in IndyCar history. Dixon has done it in Toronto.
You talked to us about it before, but how do these words ring? You have as many IndyCar wins as Mario Andretti.
It's amazing, honestly, to be close to Mario. Every time I'm asked these questions, I'm just so thankful that we still have AJ and him in the pits. We get to see them, we get to talk to them. It's just fantastic. Well done.
Just a remarkable achievement, obviously, and I think it speaks once again to the brilliance of Scott Dixon, 6-time champ, and that win ratio is just superb.
It is. 52 wins of 51 coming with the same operation. He's been with Chip, 20 years now. So just the loyalty there on both sides. It's a team game, so Dixon has had excellent equipment. That's why he stayed. That's why he's been able to perform at such a high level. But, yeah, there's been a lot of whispers around, particularly after last year with Palou joining that team, getting the championship in almost Dixon-esque type way he went about his business. I think for Dixon, he was kind of overshadowed a little bit last year, was on the verge of winning the Indy 500 and made a very rare mistake to him on pit lane, got that drive-through penalty, and what looked like a sure 500 win suddenly went away from him. And that's caught him up in the championship. He's now playing catch-up here, but I think on Sunday, just superb. The way he nailed that race, tied Mario, was an absolute legend, and we're doing it in different eras, of course.